Welcome to Karma Chronicles. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin.
The notification pinged, sharp and clear in the still morning. I wasn't surprised. I'd been sitting in the courthouse parking lot for nearly an hour waiting for the sun to rise higher and the world to wake up. I checked the screen, half expecting another spam email, but then I saw it, a message from Holly. She'd sent it to the family group chat. "You guys, I'm having the best yard sale ever. Some of the stuff is kinda junk, but people love it. Check out the boxes I'm selling. So much history." I read it again. Boxes of history. I knew Holly. She had no interest in junk unless it had sentimental value. And then the gut punch hit. The history she was talking about weren't her old books or worn-out trinkets. No, they were documents, evidence, from the biggest tax evasion case I'd been working on for the past 6 months. The case that could bring down a multi-million-dollar corporate empire and potentially jail some high-powered players. I sucked in a breath, my mind scrambling. These weren't just any papers. They were key to a $12 million fraud investigation, the kinds of documents that could make or break the whole case. The family kept texting, sending heart-eye emojis and comments about how much money Holly was making. Meanwhile, I was staring at my phone in disbelief. If those documents were sold, the case was as good as destroyed. I was already dialing my supervisor, Agent Marks. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. "Agent Marks," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "there's been a breach. A family member sold evidence from the investigation. I need to handle it immediately." He didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in 20. Do what you have to do. Let me know what you need." I hung up and leaned back against my car, staring out at the courthouse. I could hear the chatter of the city waking up around me, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, but all I could feel was this weight in my chest. The case was in danger, and Holly had no idea what she'd just done. I wasn't at the office yet when Agent Marks called. I could hear the urgency in his voice. "Casey, get here. Now, we need to recover those documents and track down the buyer." I knew what that meant. Get your ass in gear, no time for anything else. I'd been on edge all morning, but now it was real. I threw the car in gear, tearing out of the lot and heading toward the office, trying to shove my rising panic into the back of my mind. I had work to do. When I walked through the door of the FBI office, the air felt thicker, charged with the weight of the mess I had to clean up. Marks was already there, his jaw tight. He didn't need to say anything. His expression said it all. I was supposed to be the one who knew what to do in moments like this, and right now, I felt like I was barely keeping my head above water. "We're looking into the buyer now," Marks said, "but we need to understand how your sister got access to the storage unit. She wasn't supposed to touch any sensitive materials." I nodded, running a hand through my hair. It was hard to stay focused with the image of Holly smiling over a box of stolen evidence dancing in my head. "Right." I turned to one of the junior agents. "Get me a report on the access logs for the storage unit. I need to know how and when Holly was there." The team got to work, pulling up the data and making calls. I stood there, arms crossed, my mind racing. My job was to follow the numbers, to chase down fraud and unearth the kind of financial misconduct that could ruin companies. But most days it felt like a slow grind. Paperwork, interviews, hours spent tracking leads that amounted to nothing. It wasn't glamorous, and it sure wasn't the kind of thing people like Holly would understand. She'd always looked at my job like it was some kind of boring math problem. "You need to live a little, Case," she used to say. "You've got no fun in your life. All you care about is taxes." That's how Holly had always been, the free spirit, the one who'd never met a rule she didn't want to break. And me, I was the opposite. The one who stuck to the rules, who worked late nights to make sure everything was perfect. I always felt like I was chasing some invisible bar, trying to prove I was enough. But Holly was the fun one. The one who got to be spontaneous, who could mess up and still have people adore her. I was the responsible one, the dependable one, the one who was supposed to keep everything together. The team came back with the access logs. According to the report, Holly had been given emergency access to the storage unit a week ago. The paperwork was clear. She had permission to pick up a few items for me, nothing more. She wasn't supposed to touch anything related to the case. "She didn't steal it," I muttered mostly to myself. "She just didn't get it. She probably thought it was some old crap I was done with." Marks leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "That's a problem, Casey. If she was allowed in there and took the documents, we're looking at negligence at best. At worst, well, you know what the penalties are for tampering with federal evidence." I felt my stomach tighten, a sick realization creeping in. I know. I turned away from the table, trying to keep my cool. I couldn't let anyone see how this was breaking me. I had a job to do, and I was damn good at it. But this was different. Casey, Mark said, breaking through my thoughts, we'll get this under control. But right now, your sister might have jeopardized everything we've been working for. We need to track down that buyer. I nodded. The buyer, David Thompson. The name felt like an anchor, heavy and solid. I didn't know much about him, but I knew enough to know this wasn't just a case of a confused guy picking up some old documents. No, the documents were too sensitive, too valuable. As I stared at the report, I felt the weight of everything that was happening. The case slipping through my fingers, Holly's carelessness wrecking everything I'd worked for, and I couldn't help but think about how long I'd spent just trying to prove I was more than just Holly's responsible sister. Now, it wasn't just the case on the line, it was my reputation. How did she even get the access? I asked quietly. Marks looked up, his face grim. Emergency access only. It's all in the logs. She was allowed in. But she wasn't supposed to touch the files related to the case. If she did, I swallowed hard. I'll get the buyer, I said, trying to push everything else aside. You focus on Holly. Marks gave me a quick nod, his eyes not leaving mine. I'll handle it. But you need to stay focused. This could cost you more than just the case. It felt like the floor was falling out beneath me, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure I could hold it together. The team wasted no time. Within hours, we had a name, David Thompson. He'd been spotted at the yard sale where Holly had sold the boxes. From there, we dug through local listings and social media posts, trying to find anything that would link him to the sale. The search felt mechanical, but my mind was already spinning, trying to reconcile what I was doing with what I should have been doing, stopping Holly, making sure this never happened. Instead, I was tracking down a man I didn't know, to recover something I wasn't sure could be saved. David Thompson turned out to be a retired corporate lawyer, someone with no criminal background at all. Clean record, pristine references, the kind of guy who'd never been on anyone's radar, until now. But as we dug deeper, we found hints of a darker side. Financial crimes, shifty business deals, connections to shady people who'd slipped through the cracks of the law. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make me suspicious. This wasn't just some innocent buyer who thought he was getting vintage documents. He's definitely involved in something, I said to Marks, scanning the notes. Maybe not directly, but his connections are questionable. I want to see those documents myself. No one else can ID them the way I can. Marks raised an eyebrow but nodded. It's your call, but we'll be sending a team to his house. You don't need to go alone. I'm not going alone. I bit my lip, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. I need to make sure it's our stuff. I'll go with the team, but I want to verify every page, every signature. No one knows the specifics like I do. All right, Mark said. We'll keep it tight, but be careful. We don't know who this guy's connected to. Keep your head on a swivel. I nodded. There was no choice but to keep moving. The drive to David Thompson's house felt like a crawl, my hands tight on the steering wheel. I hadn't realized how much tension had built up in my shoulders until I felt the pain radiating down my spine. I should have been with my sister, talking to her, trying to fix this mess. But instead, I was headed toward a man who could destroy everything I'd worked for. I kept replaying that stupid moment in the yard sale, the image of Holly, grinning as she sold boxes that could send us both to hell. I wanted to scream at her, but I also wanted to protect her. I wanted to protect myself too, but right now, all I had was the job. We pulled up to a neat, nondescript house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the kind of place where everyone knew each other and locked their doors at night. David Thompson's house looked normal, too normal, but I knew better than to trust appearances. The team moved quickly, fanning out around the house, making sure we didn't spook anyone. I stayed close to Marks, keeping my distance from the others. My nerves were on edge, every little noise sending my heart into overdrive. The rustle of leaves, the hum of a distant lawnmower, even the sound of my own breathing felt amplified. Casey, Mark said, his voice low but steady. We're gonna go in. Stay close. I nodded, my throat tight. My mind kept flashing back to that text Holly had sent, the one with all the excited emojis and exclamation points. She didn't know what she had done, but I did, and it was too late to fix it now. We moved toward the front door, the team taking positions. Marks rang the doorbell. No answer. He knocked. Still nothing. We go in. Mark said, and I could hear the steel in his voice now. On three. I swallowed hard. The door creaked open, and a man who looked too tired for his age appeared. Mid-50s, wearing a faded t-shirt and shorts. His hair was graying at the temples, but his eyes were sharp, watching us like he knew something was wrong. Can I help you? Marks flashed his badge. FBI. We're here to speak with you about some documents you may have purchased recently. David's face didn't change, but I could see his jaw tighten. He knew exactly what we were talking about. I didn't know what I was buying, he said, his voice smooth but defensive. I just thought it was some old legal stuff. Papers no one needed anymore. I planned to resell them. But when I looked closer, I realized I'd messed up. I was going to call you on Monday. Marks held his ground. We're going to need to see those documents now. David led us to the dining room, his movements slow, as if he was trying to buy himself some time. He gestured to a table where the boxes from Holly's sale were neatly stacked, their contents spread out. Papers, so many papers. And I saw it then, documents that were supposed to stay sealed, safe, untouchable. I stepped forward, my hands cold despite the warmth of the house, and I started flipping through the pages. The weight of the moment hit me like a punch to the gut. Each page I turned confirmed what I already knew. This was it. This was the evidence we'd been hunting for, the stuff we couldn't afford to lose. This is it, I said, voice tight with relief and regret all at once. These are the files. David looked at me, his face pale. I didn't know. I didn't think it was that important. I didn't have the energy to respond. My mind was already elsewhere, on Holly, on the mess she had caused, and on the fact that if we didn't get these documents back, the entire investigation would fall apart. I turned to Marks. We've got what we came for. Let's go. The agents were already securing the evidence, but as I watched them pack up, I couldn't shake the sinking feeling in my stomach. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew. No matter how this ended, it would cost me more than just the case. David Thompson stood to the side as the agents went to work, securing the documents and getting everything organized. He was quiet now, his earlier defensive posture melting into confusion, maybe even regret. His eyes kept flicking between me and the papers, as if he expected us to accuse him of something more than just, being an idiot. I couldn't blame him for being confused. He'd bought these papers thinking they were worthless, old legal documents he could flip for a few bucks. That's what he said anyway. When he opened them and realized what he had, he panicked. I could tell. His hands shook as he motioned toward the table. I swear, I didn't know what I had, David said, his voice steady, but the edges of it betraying his nerves. I just saw a box of old papers. Thought I could make a couple hundred selling them as vintage items. He swallowed, shaking his head like he couldn't believe what he was saying. When I opened them and saw how detailed these were, how specific, well, I figured it was probably worth something, but not this. I nodded, my stomach a little calmer now that we had the evidence. We were in the clear, or at least we would be, as long as the documents were intact. And they were. I sifted through the papers, flipping quickly, scanning each page for key details. The handwriting on the cover sheets, the stamps, the notations I had spent weeks memorizing, all of it was there. This was it, the missing evidence, the part of the case that could either seal the deal or ruin it completely. They're the real deal, I said, voice tight. These are the files, no mistake. David just nodded, still pale. I was going to call someone, I swear. I thought it was weird, but I didn't know who to call, so I figured I'd just wait till Monday. I glanced at him, still trying to piece together this mess. You were going to call who? Whoever would want the papers. I wasn't sure if they were stolen or... He stopped himself, eyes wide. Look, I'm not involved in anything illegal. I wasn't trying to break the law or whatever. I thought I was just buying junk. His confusion was clear. I wasn't sure if I should feel sorry for him, but part of me did. He wasn't some mastermind behind a financial scheme. He was just a guy who'd wandered too far into something he didn't understand. The team finished collecting the papers, each document carefully sealed in evidence bags. It was all there. We'd recovered it. But I couldn't shake the sick feeling in my stomach. The case was safe for now, but the damage was already done. Marks came over to where I was standing, pulling me out of my thoughts. He looked at David and then back to me. We'll take his statement. He's not at fault here, as far as we can tell. He didn't know what he had. I nodded, but I wasn't convinced. Yeah, but Holly knew. Marks paused, his face unreadable. You know it wasn't intentional on his part. He's cooperating. We've got the documents. That's the win, Casey. Yeah, I said, but the word felt hollow. David shifted from foot to foot, still looking nervous. I could see the wheels turning in his head. He knew this wasn't over for him, not by a long shot. The FBI might not be charging him, but there would be questions. Lots of them. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, David said quietly. I never thought these were anything but old papers. I'm sorry. Yeah, I muttered, already moving away from him. You're not the one I'm worried about. I was still thinking about Holly, about how this could all come crashing down on her, no matter how innocent her intentions had been. She hadn't realized what she was selling, but that didn't change the fact that she had given away federal evidence. If this went public, and it would, the fallout could be catastrophic. For her, for me, for our family. As the team secured the last of the documents, I found myself staring at them for a second longer than I should have. They were safe, but I wasn't. David wasn't going to jail for this, but I wasn't sure I could say the same for Holly. Not after what she'd done. Marks clapped me on the shoulder, his hand heavy with the weight of the situation. We're good here. You ready to head back? I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure about anything anymore, but I had a job to do, and I'd already let this slip too far out of my control. Yeah, I said, voice rough. Let's go. As we walked out of David's house, I glanced back one last time. The evidence was secure, but nothing felt secure anymore. Not the case, not my sister, and certainly not me. By the time I got back to the office, my stomach was already in knots. I hadn't even made it to my desk when Marks walked up to me, holding a file in his hand, his expression hard. You need to see this, he said, flipping open the folder. It was a report on the access logs for the storage unit. My stomach dropped as I read through the details. Holly had been in the unit the day before the sale. She'd removed the boxes, those boxes, the ones containing the documents we'd been tracking. You've got to be kidding me, I muttered. Marks didn't say anything, just let me process the info. I felt my hands shake as I looked at the report. My sister had been in that unit, had physically touched the evidence I'd been working to protect. She'd taken it out without even thinking, without even knowing. I had to call her. I had to figure out what the hell she was thinking. I dialed her number, but the ringing in my ear felt like it was dragging on forever. It went to voicemail. I left a message trying to sound calm, even though my mind was spinning. Holly, it's Casey. I need you to call me as soon as you get this. You need to tell me what happened with the boxes from the storage unit. Please, I need answers. I hung up and let the silence settle for a moment before I checked my phone. The family group chat was blowing up. Mom, Casey, what are you doing? Holly made a mistake, that's all. She didn't know what she was doing. Why are you treating this like a crime? Uncle Rick, I'm sure Holly didn't mean to mess anything up. Stop making her feel like the villain, Case. It's just a misunderstanding. Mom, this is ridiculous. She's your sister, Casey. Why are you so eager to ruin her life over a mistake? I read the messages in a daze, each word like a punch. I wasn't even sure if I was more angry or heartbroken. But the truth was, I had to do my job. I had to fix this mess, even if my family didn't get it. Another ping. This time, it was from my dad. I hadn't heard from him in months, not since he walked out of my life a year ago. Dad, Casey, listen. I know you're doing your job, but you're taking this too far. It was a mistake. It's just paperwork. Drop the charges. Okay, this isn't worth destroying your sister over. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my chest. My dad was asking me to let it go, to overlook something that could destroy everything I'd worked for. And worse, he was putting Holly above everything else. Again. I leaned back in my chair, running a hand through my hair. Every decision felt like it was tearing me apart. If I didn't do my job, if I didn't move forward with the investigation, it would be my fault if the case collapsed. But if I went through with it, I'd lose my sister. I'd lose my family. Casey, Mark said, pulling me out of my thoughts. I know this is hard, but you have to keep your head in the game. We've got to move forward. The evidence was compromised. We have no choice but to pursue it. I looked up at him, my throat tight. I know, but you don't understand. It's Holly. She didn't do this on purpose. She wasn't thinking. Marks's expression softened, but he didn't waver. I get it, but this is bigger than family. This is about the case. If we don't take action, everything we've worked for is gone. You know that. I nodded, my stomach churning with guilt. I knew he was right, but I didn't know if I could live with the consequences. The phone buzzed again. It was Holly, finally calling me back. I took a deep breath before answering. "Holly, we need to talk." She sounded tired, defeated almost. "I didn't know what I was doing, Case. I didn't mean to screw everything up. I thought I was helping." "Helping? By selling federal evidence?" My voice cracked before I could catch it. "Holly, you took the boxes. You took the evidence. Do you even realize what you've done?" "I didn't know, Casey, I swear. I was just cleaning out your stuff. I didn't know it was that important. I didn't know what I was selling." Her voice wavered. I could hear the tears just under the surface, and part of me wanted to reach through the phone, tell her everything would be okay, but I couldn't. "I know you didn't know, but you did it. And now I have to make a decision. And I don't know what to do, Holly." There was a long silence, and when she finally spoke, it was soft, almost pleading. "Please, Case, don't do this. Don't let them arrest me. Please." I shut my eyes, my chest tightening. "I don't have a choice. I'm doing my job, Holly. You should have thought about that before you sold those boxes." I ended the call without another word. Marks looked at me as I set the phone down. "You're doing the right thing, Casey. This isn't easy, but you have to keep going." I nodded, but inside, I felt like I was breaking. I'd lost my sister, I'd lost my family, and the hardest part was realizing I wasn't sure if I could ever get it back. I wasn't surprised when the arrest warrant for Holly was drafted. As much as I hated the thought of it, it was the only way forward. The breach was real, the case was at risk, and there was no getting around it. But as I sat there in the office, staring at the paperwork in front of me, I felt like I was signing away any chance of a normal relationship with my sister. Maybe I already had, even before this. Holly had always been the free spirit, the one who lived in the moment, did what felt right at the time, and never cared much about consequences. I had always been the opposite, focused, careful, obsessed with keeping everything in order. Growing up, I'd felt like I was always chasing something I couldn't quite reach. While Holly floated through life, everyone seemed to admire her for it. It was like she got away with everything. And me? I got nothing but praise for being the responsible one, the one who always did what was expected. I never even knew what it felt like to take risks, because the stakes always felt too high. But I got it. I understood my role. I'd always been the one who cleaned up after the messes Holly made. But this time, this mess was too big to clean up. It wasn't just about the case anymore. The more I looked at the warrant, the more I realized this would change everything. If I moved forward with the arrest, I'd lose Holly, the last shred of family I had left. And for what? To keep a case going. The door to my office opened, and Mark stepped in, looking more tired than usual. "Casey, we need to talk," he said, his voice steady, but carrying the weight of the situation. He set down a file in front of me, the pages thick with the details of the warrant. I could feel the knot tighten in my stomach. "I know," I said, staring at the papers. "I don't know what to do." "You're doing your job," Mark said, sitting across from me. "This is bigger than family. You know that." I nodded, even though it felt like my heart was cracking open. We'd uncovered more about Holly's motives. She didn't intend to cause harm, but that didn't change the fact that she had. She'd seen the documents as junk. Just more clutter in my life she wanted to help clear out. She didn't get it. She never did. She thought she was doing me a favor, getting rid of the stuff that weighed me down. But that wasn't her decision to make. "I don't know if I can do this," I whispered, staring down at the arrest warrant. "She's my sister, Marks. She doesn't get it, but that doesn't make this any easier." Mark stayed quiet for a long moment, as if weighing his own words. "I know. This is hard, but you can't let her off the hook just because she's your sister. The law doesn't work like that." I gritted my teeth, not because I didn't understand, but because I knew he was right. Just as I thought the room couldn't feel more suffocating, my phone buzzed on the desk. I glanced at the screen. It was Aaron, Holly's husband. I knew this wasn't going to be good. I answered on the second ring. "Aaron, Casey, please listen to me." His voice was tight, frantic. "This is insane. You can't arrest her. Holly didn't mean to. She thought she was helping. She's been under so much stress, and now this. Please, just reconsider. Let us pay restitution or something. I'll cover the value of those documents. Just don't do this to her." I could feel the weight of his words pulling at me, but it only made me feel worse. It wasn't about the money. I wasn't looking to destroy her life. But this wasn't a simple mistake. This was evidence tampering, and the law didn't care about intentions. "I can't, Aaron," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. This isn't something I can just make go away. Holly took federal evidence. She sold it. There are legal consequences, and I don't have the option of just pretending it didn't happen. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When he finally spoke again, his voice cracked. Casey, I'm begging you. Please don't destroy our family over this. Please don't do this to her. I let out a breath. The words stuck in my throat. I was destroying our family, I knew it, and I hated myself for it. I have no choice, I said quietly, more to myself than to Aaron. I can't let this go. It's bigger than me, it's bigger than Holly. It's the law. I hung up before I could hear his response. Marks watched me, his expression softening, but he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. I should have done something sooner, I whispered, more to myself than to him. I should have stopped her before any of this happened. You couldn't have known, Marks replied gently. You're doing what you have to do, Casey. It's not easy, but it's what you signed up for. I nodded, but it didn't make it any easier. The arrest warrant was there. It was real. And Holly. She was going to have to face the consequences, whether I liked it or not. But no matter what happened, nothing would ever be the same. The day Holly's arrest went public, everything changed. I thought I'd prepared for the backlash, but nothing could have really prepared me for the way the media exploded. News outlets picked up the story, and suddenly I wasn't just dealing with my sister's mistake, I was the face of it. The headline screamed FBI agent accused of betraying her own family. And that's what it felt like. Betrayal. The phone never stopped ringing. Friends, colleagues, random family members who I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had an opinion on how I should handle it. But the worst part, the messages from Holly's side of the family, they were furious, all of them, accusing me of tearing the family apart. In court, the defense team came out swinging. They weren't trying to hide the facts. They were trying to paint Holly as a victim of her own ignorance. She didn't understand the significance of the documents, they argued, pushing the narrative that Holly had no idea what she was selling. They played up her kind-hearted nature, how she only wanted to help me clean out the clutter in my life. I was already bracing myself when they called me to the witness stand. My heart pounded, but I pushed it aside. I couldn't let myself be weak. Not now. When I walked up there, I could feel every eye in the courtroom on me, the weight of it suffocating. I tried to focus on the task at hand, but my mind kept flickering back to Holly, her face, her tears, the desperation in her voice when she begged me to drop everything. I cleared my throat and faced the defense attorney, who was already smirking like he had me cornered. Agent Casey, can you confirm that Holly Fitzgerald understood the seriousness of the documents she sold? He asked, his voice smooth and patronizing. I kept my voice steady. No, she didn't. She didn't understand the value of the documents, but that doesn't change the fact that they were federal evidence and they were sold without authorization. And you're telling the court that her actions put this entire investigation at risk. He pressed, leaning in. I'm telling you that these documents were key to a multi-million-dollar investigation, one that could have put dangerous criminals behind bars. The breach compromised everything, I said, the words heavy with conviction. The defense lawyer nodded slowly, like he was digesting what I said, before turning his attention back to me with a calculated look. Isn't it true, Agent Fitzgerald, that your sister's actions may have been a simple mistake? I've already testified to that, I said, holding his gaze. But that doesn't change the legal consequences. She broke the law, and now we're here. The defense leaned back, his expression shifting. And isn't it also true that you're personally invested in this case? I felt my stomach tighten. I'd been expecting this. They were trying to make me the villain, the sister who was too cold to forgive, who cared more about her career than family. Of course I'm personally invested, I said, my voice firm, but my duty is to the victims, to the law. I didn't want this to happen, but I'm not here for personal reasons. I'm here to make sure justice is done. The defense lawyer paused, letting my words sink in before asking his final question. But isn't it also true that you're the one who's prosecuting your own sister? Isn't it true that you've let your career overshadow your family? I didn't flinch. I couldn't. The tension in the room was thick, the weight of their words pushing down on me like a physical force. But I held my ground. I'm not here to ruin my sister's life. But I can't look away from the facts, no matter who they point to. My duty is to justice, and I'm doing it. The defense didn't have any more questions, but I could feel the judgment in the air, thick and suffocating. It was like the whole courtroom was asking the same question. How could you do this to your sister? The judge ruled that the case would proceed. Holly was facing multiple felony charges. As I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. I'd done what I had to do, but nothing felt right anymore. I couldn't shake the feeling that something in me had changed, something that couldn't be fixed. I had done my job, but I'd lost a part of myself in the process. The calls from my family started coming in again, all of them pleading with me to reconsider, to drop the charges, to walk away from everything. But I couldn't. I knew what I had to do. But the pain of losing Holly, of losing the family we used to be, was starting to crush me. I went back to my office, the weight of the case sitting heavy on my shoulders. I tried to focus, but every message from family, every angry voicemail, was like 1,000 cuts. I didn't have any answers, not yet. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing, but I knew one thing for sure. No matter how this ended, nothing would ever be the same again. The courtroom felt like it was closing in around me. The air was thick with tension, the kind of heaviness that settled deep in your chest and made it hard to breathe. Holly stood in front of the judge, her hands trembling as she gripped the sides of the table. Her face was pale, blotchy from crying, and I couldn't look away. She'd pleaded guilty to evidence theft, obstruction, and tampering. The trial was over, and now it was time for the sentencing. Holly was sobbing, trying to speak, but the words kept getting stuck in her throat. She kept saying she never meant to hurt anyone, that it was all just a mistake, that she was sorry. But no matter how many times she said it, the truth still sat like a stone in my gut. She'd done it. She'd sold the evidence, and the case, our case, was shattered because of it. I stood at the back of the courtroom, arms crossed, my eyes fixed on her. I wanted to look away, to pretend I wasn't the one who'd pushed this all the way to the end. But I couldn't. I couldn't let myself look away now. The judge's voice cut through the silence, sharp and clear. Ms. Fitzgerald, you've shown remorse for your actions, but the severity of your crime cannot be overlooked. You've jeopardized a federal investigation, one that could have affected the lives of many victims. The consequences are grave. I felt the weight of his words as if they were meant for me too. This wasn't just about Holly anymore. This was about everything. The investigation, my career, the cost of the choices I'd made. The judge paused, looking down at the paperwork in front of him. Then he looked up, meeting Holly's eyes. I sentence you to 5 years in federal prison, with the possibility of parole after 2 years. My heart sank, and I could hear the collective gasp from the courtroom. The weight of the moment hit me like a punch in the gut. 5 years, 2 with parole, but that didn't change what it meant. Holly's knees buckled, and she collapsed into a chair, crying harder now. The sound was raw, desperate, and it tore through the air like a knife. I wanted to run to her, to hold her and make it all go away, but I couldn't. Not anymore. I couldn't be the one to fix this. As the courtroom cleared, I didn't look at anyone. I just turned and walked toward the exit, feeling like I was dragging a weight behind me. Every step felt heavier than the last, like I was sinking into the floor. Outside the courthouse, my phone buzzed nonstop. Family members, more accusations, more anger. How could you do this? You ruined her life, Casey. She's your sister. You're no better than they are. You've torn our family apart. I didn't answer. What was there to say? When I finally made it back to my apartment, the silence felt suffocating. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing by outside. I sat down on the couch, staring at the empty space in front of me, where once there had been a family. The bond we had felt unbreakable, back when it was just the three of us, me, Holly, and Mom. Back when we weren't torn apart by a stupid mistake that grew into something impossible to fix. I closed my eyes, but all I saw was Holly's face, the regret in her eyes, the devastation in her voice when she'd begged me to stop. I thought I could make the right choice. I thought I could separate my duty from my family, but I was wrong. It was impossible to do that. I'd lost Holly. I knew that. But I was losing everything else too. I'd lost the respect of my family, my place in their lives. The hardest part wasn't that Holly was going to prison. It was that we'd crossed a line, that things between us would never go back to what they were. I sat there in the dark, the weight of it all pressing down on me, and I finally let myself feel it. I'd done the right thing, but at what cost? What had I lost in the process? I had no answers. Just the echo of my family's voices and the hollow feeling of knowing that no matter what happened next, Nothing would ever be the same. A year had passed since the case closed. The perpetrators of the tax evasion scheme were sentenced to prison, and the victims were finally receiving restitution, their lives slowly beginning to rebuild. The case had been a success in the professional sense. We'd gotten what we came for, justice in the form of prison sentences and financial compensation. But the cost, it had been steep, and I felt it every single day. I distanced myself from my family as much as I could. The messages from them never stopped coming, just different variations of the same thing. You ruined everything, Casey. You've lost us. It was easier to ignore them. Easier than answering calls, easier than hearing their anger, their disappointment. I'd been the one who tore the family apart, the one who pushed everything too far. I was sitting in a large, sterile room at a compensation hearing for the fraud victims when I saw her. Sarah Dawson, one of the victims who had lost everything in the scheme. She'd been waiting quietly in the back of the room, her hands folded tightly in her lap. When she saw me, she stood up and walked toward me, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I braced myself. I didn't know if I could take one more person telling me I'd done the right thing. "Agent Fitzgerald," Sarah said, her voice thick with emotion. I just wanted to thank you." I blinked, taken aback. "Thank me." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "Yes, I don't know what would have happened if those documents hadn't been recovered. The restitution check I got, it's going to help me keep my house. Without it, I don't know what I would have done. You saved me." I swallowed hard, suddenly feeling a lump in my throat. All I could do was nod. I saved her. The words felt strange, but there it was. She was one of the victims I'd worked so hard to protect, and now, in some small way, I had helped. "I know it came at a cost for you," Sarah continued, her voice softening. "But I want you to know how much it means. What you did, it mattered. To me, to all of us." I wanted to say something, to explain how the cost had felt like a knife twisting in my chest, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I simply said, "I'm glad I could help." She reached out, her hand shaking slightly, and took mine. "Thank you, truly. You gave me a chance to rebuild my life." I didn't know what else to say. Her gratitude was genuine, and I could feel the weight of it. The weight of all the victims who had been saved by the evidence I'd preserved. I'd done my job, I'd protected them. But at what cost? I thought again, the question that always haunted me. The thought of Holly in prison, my family fractured beyond repair. It was all still so raw, so painful. As Sarah walked away, I felt the familiar weight of pride and sorrow settle in. I had done the right thing. I'd sacrificed my family for justice, and I would always stand by that decision. But it didn't mean it didn't hurt. I stood there for a moment, taking in the room full of people whose lives were being put back together, their futures a little bit brighter because of the case I'd worked on. And I realized, with a quiet certainty, that the choice I'd made, painful as it was the right one. I walked out of the hearing, my heart still heavy but a little lighter too. There was pride there, but there was also the bittersweet knowledge that sometimes doing the right thing meant losing everything you thought you could count on. And it was a price I was still learning to pay.